today we're going to be taking a look at the Snow Peak Trek 1400 and Trek 900 pot set with some cups. This is a nesting pot set that I use for my family. We are a 3-person family, 2 adults and a young 2-year-old toddler. So we find that this is a sufficient pot set for us to go out on just a regular camping trip, a day trip, or whatever we want to do in the outdoors. It has the volume for us to be able to cook all of our meals, and cups for us to drink all of our beverages. So the size is not that big, so it's quite easy to slip into even just a day pack. So I'm just going to start off by showing you guys the Trek 1400 here. It is not that big of a pot when you actually have it all packed up in your bag. Size comparison to a MSR Titan Kettle. You see the MSR Titan Kettle here, and when we look at the 1400, it's not that much bigger in terms of size. Okay, because when you actually look at it, the Trek 900 fits inside the Trek 1400, and there's not much room in there for it to wiggle around, so it's only a little bit bigger, but it gives you almost 50% more volume. So let me unpack all of this on the table here, and I'll get back with you guys. Alright, so here I've unpacked the pot set, and you can see everything that fits inside the 1400. It is a pretty tight fit because everything initially does have to fit inside the Trek 900, but even with the 3 cups, the utensils, I have some lids for some of the cups, a pot stand, a scrubby, it does all fit inside the Trek 900. So if you did have a 2-person party, you could just take out one of these cups and you'd still be able to fit everything inside a Trek 900, and that would be enough. If you did want to share one container to eat out of and maybe use the pan lid as a separate vessel to eat out of. But for me, I do prefer to have 2 larger pots to eat out of, and usually for the toddler, if he is eating, he usually prefers to eat out of a dish. Now that we kind of talked about the usage, maybe we'll just go into a discussion about the pros and the cons of the pots first. So let me put away some of these items kind of at the top, and then I'll get back to you guys and talk to you about the pots. Okay, so let's talk about some of the pros for the pots here. We do have the ability for them to nest, which is a great plus. You can see here they nest in here not too tightly, but there's not too much room for them to wiggle around. Once you get the lid in here, it takes up a bit more volume and you don't really get too much rattling. So let me just put these two together, and I'll hold down so you don't really hear too much rattling. It does move around a little bit, but it is very manageable. So you can see here, it is about this much room for the lid right when you put it on, so that's why you don't really get too much shifting around. Okay, so another one of the pros, it's also a con though, is this pan lid, because it is quite versatile. You can use it to eat out of. You could possibly fry an egg or fry something up in there. You do need to use a lot of oil though. I haven't actually tried that with the larger pan, but with the smaller one I have, and it does get pretty sticky, so you do have to really put a lot of oil to prevent your food from sticking. One of the cons that I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have seen in other reviews is that the actual lids, they tend to fall off quite a bit. So the way it's designed, how it kind of overlaps with the bottom with the pot instead of sitting inside, it tends to kind of, when it starts to build up steam, the pot does have a tendency to kind of lift up and just kind of slide off itself. So the way that I found to avoid that happening is making sure that I open up the handle for the pan here and making sure that the pan handle is over the handle of the pot here. So when it's in this configuration, even when it does start to tip off, it just usually kind of tips off onto itself and it won't fall off your stove or fall off your campfire. So that's just a small tip that I have for you there. But in terms of the pots, the features, they do have some gradation markings, so volume markings in both milliliters and ounces, and you have that on both of them. You can see here. One of the things that I found interesting was that the volume markings, as you can see, are the same. So it only goes up to 600 milliliters on the larger pot, and the smaller pot also has 600 milliliters. So I would have liked to see them to kind of extend this volume marking a little bit more up the pot, because when I'm using this larger pot, usually I'm trying to cook for more people, and 600 milliliters of water is not enough. You probably want it closer to full, so, or closer to at least 1 liter. So that's something that I would have liked to seen. All right, so the pots I find are quite durable. I have dropped the 900 quite a few times. You do see a little bit more dings in this one because I do use this one more frequently. I did use it with my Solo Stove Lite and also with the Bush Buddy Mini. So, and also in the campfire. That's why this one you see is quite sooty. I did try to clean off with some steel wool, but you can't get everything. The 1400, this one I mainly just use over a stove, which I have the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, which I mainly use it with. So that's why it stays relatively clean, and yeah, doesn't really get too much soot on it. Now let's take a look at the cups, and I will put away the pots over to the side, and we can talk about how the cups work and how they nest, and we'll take a look at the sizes of them. And we'll also give you a couple other options if you don't want to get these specific cups. I do know that the cups will nest with the Toaks 370 milliliter cup as well as the Titan Cup, so from MSR. So I will be showing you that in a second. All right, so let me put away these pots and I'll get back with you. So one more thing I did want to mention before I started talking about the cups is just this little bit of silicone that that I did put on the handles here. So you can see it is just a little bit of silicone tubing, high temperature tubing, and the way you put it on is you just have to buy the correct size tubing. I believe this is a size medium fuel hose for a RC car, so you can just pick that up from your hobby shop. And what I did do was I put some soap and water solution inside both the silicone tubing and on the actual handle, and I was able to just it still takes quite a bit of effort, but I was able to slide it up and around and put it up onto the actual handle. So what a benefit I find of this is if you do not do this and you do boil your water with your lid like this, when you try to take off your lid and you try to touch the handle, because it is touching the top of your pot lid, it does get quite hot and you will burn yourself. So having the little bit of silicone here just gives you something to lift up the lid so it doesn't burn your hand. So I did do that with both of these handles, and I find that it does work pretty well. Okay. All right. So the next item that we want to talk about is the cups. So you can see here that we have 3 cups. You'll find it surprising with the small 220 cup is the one that I use. This sweet pink Snow Peak Double Wall 450 is my wife's, and the 300 is for our toddler, and this is the one from the line collection, so you can see that there is a bear here. So let's take a look at the lids as well, because I think that some people will find these useful. So I do have the 300 milliliter lid here from Snow Peak, and that does fit on the 300. This was just a random lid from a porcelain coffee cup that we had lying around at home. Pretty sure we got it at the Walmart or dollar store. Not entirely sure where we got the cup from, but if you do find this type of lid, it's pretty standard lid. You can usually find at most shops. You can purchase that cup, and this lid actually fits perfectly on your Snow Peak 450. So that way you don't have to spend all that money for buying the actual Snow Peak lid. You can just use this one, and you can see this one, the color combination is pretty good. And yeah, it also has a sliding cover to keep your liquids in there. So it's good to have this if you want to, keep insects out of your drink, or you want to, maintain the heat for a little bit longer, or you just want to prevent spills. This does the trick. And then we have the Snow Peak 220, and this is my cup that I got from Japan. And I could have got the Snow Peak Trek 700, but I did find that was just a little bit too big to use as a mug. That will nest inside the 900, and the 450 will nest inside the Trek 700 if you do have that. But I just found that I already had 2 pots. I didn't need another giant pot in this setup, so I went with the smaller Snow Peak 220. It's good for drinking alcohol, or if you do have a double shot of espresso. This is probably better than having that giant 700 milliliter cup pot. Okay, so I did mention that if you don't have the if you don't want to go with a double wall titanium cup, and you would prefer to stick with a single wall, you could go with the single wall Snow Peak 450. All of these will nest inside, because the volume of the inside of the 450 double wall and the 450 single wall is the same. So you could really nest it in there. It's not a very tight fit, so you don't really have any trouble getting the cups out. And you can see here, I'll put in the 220, so everything does fit inside. Okay, and as I mentioned, if you don't have this cup but you still want to use something similar, and you don't want to pay the prices that the Snow Peaks are, or maybe you already have one of these other cups at home, you could use the Toaks 375 milliliter cup. So this one here is quite good, and I think they make a 450 or 400 milliliter as well. That's just slightly taller, but in terms of the diameter, it is the same. So you can see here the 300 does fit inside that, and the 300 also fits inside the MSR. This is the MSR Titan Cup, so it does fit inside. It is a little bit more of a tighter squeeze, but it does fit. You will notice that it is a little bit harder to get the 300 out from in here, but if you just put your hand in and you just pull, it does come out. It does have a little bit of scraping, but it's not too bad. Just has a little bit of friction to keep it in there. Okay, so let's move on to utensils. So let me put away these 2 cups that I don't usually keep as part of this set here, and we can move on to utensils. Actually, let's move on to the stove. So this is the MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe. I'm sure if you're watching this, you have seen a lot of the other videos and reviews on the stove. It is a very good stove. I am in Canada here, so it is a little bit more difficult for me to get the Soto Windmaster. So I ended up getting the MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe instead. It's been a good stove. I haven't really had any issues. piezo igniter works every single time, and yeah, I've just found that it gets the job done, and it does work in the wind. The regulator also is quite good. I have used it down to around freezing temperatures, and it still performs decent. I haven't really used it in anything lower than that, because when it is that cold, I just end up bringing my MSR Whisper Light out, and the white gas melts the snow a lot better than trying to bring this one along. Okay, so talking about the utensils here, I do just have 3 sporks and just your regular folding sporks, and I do have a pair of chopsticks. So this pair of chopsticks I do find sometimes it's easier to cook my food with, because it's easier to pick up your food with a set of chopsticks, instead of trying to use a spork all the time, or maybe you need a spork and a chopstick. So these get the job done, and yeah, and I do like that they do fold into themselves here. So they just fold into themselves, and you can usually buy these at your I think it's the Japanese dollar stores or Asian dollar stores. You should be able to find these quite easily and quite readily at those stores, just in the lunchbox sections. I also like to carry a scrubby with me, because sometimes the food does get stuck in these cook pots, because they are titanium if you're trying to cook something in them. So having a scraper with a bristle brush is quite handy. I do like this more than using a actual sponge, because this one, once you wring it out and you just kind of shake it, it doesn't retain any water in the bristles too much. And if you're using a sponge, as you probably know, it does retain quite a bit of water, and it does just end up having a funky smell after you finish each of your trips. Have a standard Bic lighter in case the piezo igniter fails. And the last thing that I do keep in my cook set, for this one specifically, I only use it for this one really, is just a pot support. So I do find that the pot support is quite handy for this pot set, because when we're talking about canister stove, it's quite small, right? So the canister, if you're using a 110 or maybe even a 220 gas canister, they are relatively small. So if you have a pot of water, say like 1.4 liters, like this actually does hold, then you're going to have a very small base, and you're going to have a really big heavy pot of water sitting on the top. So you can see here the size. Here, let me just show you the size comparison of the bottom of the pot here compared to a gas canister. So imagine that you have a really heavy object sitting on top of a smaller base. You don't really see buildings built like that either, because that's not the most structurally sound thing. So that's why we use the pot support here, the canister stand here, and we are able to make the pot a lot more stable. And I also do find that it's good for when you have kids around, because they could just be running around, they could accidentally knock the pot, and this just gives you that little bit of extra security that it's not going to fall over so easily. Okay, so let me show you guys how I put all of this back into the pot set and how it all nests. So let me just get these a little bit more organized, and then we'll put everything back into the pots in the nesting configuration. Okay, so I'm going to show you how all of these items fit back into the pot set. I am not going to be nesting a fuel canister inside this pot set, because I usually, on a trip with the family, if it's a day trip, I usually bring a smaller one, and if I am going on a longer trip, maybe a weekend trip, then I do bring the 220 canister, and the 220 canister can definitely not fit inside, so I don't even trying to fit a canister, because depending on the trip, it I either use a smaller one or the bigger one. So I usually just keep this on the side in my bag somewhere. I'm gonna start by filling up everything into the Trek 900, because this really just needs to sit back inside the 1400, and everything will just fit together as long as you get it properly into the 900. So the 450 with the 300 with the 220. I like to put my Pocket Rocket Deluxe into the actual 220 upside down. Okay, and then I can fit all of my sporks inside the cup, or you could put one on the outside if you want to as well. Lighter fits inside. The chopsticks I like to keep on the outside here. The scrubby, and then you can see here the pot support and your lids. So all of this fits relatively well inside your pot set. So we'll just take this, and we can take the lid, and doesn't close fully flush, but if you did organize it a little bit better than I have here, you could probably get it to be flush, because usually I am able to get it flush, but of course on video doesn't always work out, but maybe it's like this. So anyways, you take your lid here, and you take your lid here, and this pretty much it's close, but yeah, so you just take your full pot set and you can put it back into the baggie here. The easiest way is actually just to take the lids off, put your pot in like this, and then put the lids back on. So here we go. Put this guy on, put this in. And close up the lid here. Close up the baggie. And here you go. And this is the pot set. So you can see it is a little bit bigger than my other setups for, this is my day trip for when I go solo, when I'm going fishing. And this is the Titan Kettle with all of my stuff inside with the Bush Buddy Mini. It is a little bit bigger, but we're not talking a substantial size difference between the Trek 1400 and the Titan Kettle. And we're talking about a lot more versatility and options here with this set. So that will be the video here. If you do have any questions about dimensions, diameter, height of any of these items, I do have a caliper, and I can do the measurements for you. So if you do want to see how big these things are, to see if it'll work with your pot set, you can just drop a message or a comment below the video, and I will get back to you on that.